Well, hello there. Hopefully, everyone can hear me and see me okay. I was having some pretty gigantic technical issues right before we started, which is why we're a little bit late. My computer did the thing where it decides that it just kind of doesn't want to work anymore, and you have to like turn it off, which is always nerve wracking because you're expecting that blue screen of death when it comes back. So yeah, this is a bit of a quick change of plans that just sort of happened within the last few hours. That's basically how we do things here at Agora. We kind of just roll with the punches, basically. As some of you probably know, a very interesting and very impressive new season of Love, Death, and Robots sort of showed up suddenly on the scene over at Netflix. For those who may not have Netflix, you might not know what the hell I'm even talking about. But for those who do, which is probably most of you, it's pretty impressive. They're on season 3 now. 3, I think, right? Yeah, this is the 3rd season. And there are some really amazing additions. And one of those additions happens to be a repeat director. Like I always butcher his name, so I'm gonna try my best to say it, and then our two guests can pretty much make fun of me when they come on. But Alberto Mielgo, I think, is somewhere around there. My Spanish linguistics aren't exactly so great. So, anyways, I've never met him in person, but I'm a very big fan of his work. He directed a couple things you might know about, which are, I would say, the first season of Love, Death, and Robots. There was an episode in there called The Witness, which I believe both of our guests worked on as well. Agora did some work on that one. And of course, the new installment of this particularly amazing director called Jibaro, which is what we're going to be talking about tonight. He also directed the cinematic kind of, I think, the release teaser or trailer for Watch Dogs Legion, which a lot of people don't know that he did that, but he did. It's actually quite amazing. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely go take a look. And also just got an Academy Award recently for his work on The Windshield Wiper, which is another amazing piece of his work that you should all probably check out. And I guess other than that, another thing he's quite famous for is working on very, very early development for Into the Spider-Verse. He did a bunch of animatic-like work to kind of develop the sort of the visual style and language. And it's funny because I feel like anybody who's ever seen his early work like that will often say that should just go out. You should just ship it because the animatics are literally next level, unbelievably full of character and energy. And basically, the film almost has a hard time just matching that level. Obviously, there's a lot more detail that suddenly gets poured in there, but cinematically and sort of emotionally, it feels like it's already all there. I'm sure our two guests will agree. So we actually we set this up with Remy Comtois. He's one of the supervising animators on. He actually worked on both of these installments, both The Witness as well as Jibaro, and we actually have a super surprise appearance of Jacob Gardner, our very own Jacob Gardner, also worked as a supervisor on this. So we'll have lots of anecdotal stories to tell. So let's bring him in, and we'll talk a little bit about Jibaro and what that was like. Remy Comtois. Comtois.
Hey.
Comtois. I live in Quebec. I should be better than that. I'm sorry.
It's already pretty close.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. And Jacob Gardner. This one's a little easier for my English tongue. Hello, Jacob Gardner.
It's a lot easier. Hello.
Yeah, it's a little bit easier. Thanks for hanging out tonight, both of you. I know it was last second, but I figured, why not take an hour to celebrate this obviously very, very hot topic right now. I think a lot of people obviously want to hear about what it was like to work on it, what it was like to just touch such genius, I think. What was it like? Where do we even start? Do you want
to go take
That's a good question. No, yeah. I have no idea where to begin. Well, it's a gigantic, chaotic thing.
Well, why don't we start? Let's start just for fun. Let's just set the stage a little bit and talk really quickly about The Witness and what because that really set the stage, right? That was the first one for the season 1, The Witness, and a lot of people took note back then because it was pretty amazing. The Witness, for those who maybe watched the season but didn't remember, it's the one where it was like a loop. a guy, he looks across the apartment building alley, and he sees someone, what seems to be someone killing someone, like a woman. And so then there's this huge chase, which is epic through this sort of cities. It ends up at like this weird striptease bar, and like it's very, very, very abstract in many, many ways. And it ends up kind of, spoiler alert, it ends up kind of going back to the apartment buildings, and it looks like the roles had reversed, and it looks like they're about to go back into that same loop. And you get this feeling after you watch it that you're like, oh my God, are these people doomed to just play this loop on forever and ever? Very, very, very amazing piece. And you both worked on that. Right. Maybe talk really quickly about what that was like.
I was just going to add that a visual cue that a lot of people remember is it's the one with the woman who smeared her lipstick.
Yes.
When she witnesses the murder. So,
yep.
That was the first one that I worked on with Alberto, and that was your second or third, Remy, that you had worked on with him?
It was actually my second, in the sense that I worked. We started working on the windshield wiper a long time before the witness.
I had no idea.
Yes, yeah. So I think it took like 6 years to complete that short film. The windshield wiper. So
well, congratulations then, because I mean that won an Academy Award. So nice job.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm proud of being part of this.
I would be too. Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that's how I actually started. That was my first project with Alberto. It was this project. We weren't even paid for this. It's all like just people getting together to work on that short film, which is the windshield wiper. And we worked on that like on and off between projects, between work. So Alberto went to Sony, but we started before going to Sony, and then he left Sony, and then we kept working on windshield wiper. So it was really on and off like that. And then he went to do The Witness with a blur for Love, Death, and Robots. So this is where I kind of, since then, I kind of stuck to him somehow and followed him onto his other projects. So yeah, this is how I ended up working on The Witness.
Right.
I like it.
After that, both of us worked on Watch Dogs as well.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. I did not know that you worked on that as well. That's crazy. Yeah. So you've literally pretty much just sort of like, you're just bandwagon hoppers at this point, just sort of essentially whatever he's working on, get involved.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Which is probably not a terribly bad idea, considering the amazing reactions that these pieces of work end up typically generating. Whenever anything he drops shows up on the scenes, you could bet that you're going to see social media kind of light up and talk a little bit about it. It kind of reminds me of like what happened when Arcane kind of dropped onto the world, and everyone was like, oh my God, it sort of invigorates and energizes the animation community. Because why do you think that is? What about his work do you think get pulls? Like, I mean, I'm sure there's many things, but in your mind, if you had to pick a couple things at the top of your mind, what makes his directorial influence feel like it stands out amongst the rest?
For me, I think I'd say that he dares to do stuff that he likes, and he dares to go and do stuff for adults and push the boundaries. That's funny because when I was actually on Arcane, there was also
he's got everything.
Casual name drop there.
I talked with the supervisor there, and it's actually The Witness who got me hired at Fortiche for Arcane. And I was casually talking with the supervisor, and this is where we kind of came to like this chat, where what's nice about these shorts is that it kind of pushes the boundary to a limit, and that makes it so that other people see that as like, oh, they pushed it that far, so maybe we can push it a little bit more in that direction, so a little bit more adult, a little bit more drama, a little bit more different in a way. So I think that's what he's kind of doing in that sense, and he's bringing that to the mainstream. I think that's also very
right.
important.
So rather than making something for the mainstream, he makes something that he wants to make, a vision that he has that is off the beaten path and original and fresh, but it just so happens to be that it's compatible with the mainstream. So the mainstream sort of gobbles it up and makes it feel like people are watching something that feels new and untapped, right?
Yeah. I think that's it. And then he's obviously an amazing artist too. He does these amazing paintings. If you'd see, like, sometimes on windshield wiper, he would shoot his own references because we didn't have the budget and everything. So it was often him filming himself, and you could see like his his place with all these paintings all over the place, and he's just an amazing artist overall as well. So
yeah, this is my surprised face. I mean, it would be weird for him to not be some sort of prolific sort of visual genius. Like, I'm not even a little bit surprised. I mean, for those who are interested, you should just go to YouTube and type in Spider-Man animatic, and you'll find somewhere in there, it'll come up in the first page for sure. And you'll see a bunch of these tests that he did, and you'll get a taste of what his animatics look like. And then you will see the kind of creative sort of genius that lies within Alberto, because it's just so, like, it's so clear that he's got such a very clear vision on what the film is going to be, basically at such an early stage in development. And I assume that I haven't worked on any of his work, so I assume that all his work is sort of starts like that. Is that his process basically all the time, starting with a really, really like very, very detailed animatic? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for this one, for Jibaro in particular, obviously I can't dance, and I can't pull off the
Why is
moves.
that
And I don't
obvious,
think
Remy? Why is that obvious?
I don't know. Maybe I have
Obviously, I
that.
can't
You
dance.
know, maybe I can, but no.
I didn't size you up and immediately think you couldn't dance. I wouldn't be surprised if you were an amazing dancer.
Yeah. So he got tons and tons of references. So from the start, he does start with the animatic. He comes up with this amazing, thing, and he does it all on his own. And the craziest thing, and I think Jacob can testify, is like we saw the pile of drawings for his animatics, because he does it all by hand on
That's
paper.
correct. I've heard. Yeah, Jacob
And
was
then
telling me this. Crazy.
he scans them,
Wow.
and then puts them into After Effects, and then applies color, and everything, and it's just amazing. And
And
you could see, like, it's towers and towers of paper for
Oh, man.
15 minutes short. So yeah, it's crazy.
And the work in After Effects is quite in depth too, because he works in layers. Like, it's like there's already, what I find the most interesting about his animatics is how much depth there is, because he breaks it all down into layers. So there's like this nice parallax. So the camera feels very, very well sorted out right from the very beginning. It's like
Absolutely.
camera's as much of a character as anything else.
Yeah, it's not like an other storyboard animatics that you might have seen in other pieces where it's like one drawing after another timed out to the proper timing. It's that they are in 3D space in After Effects with drawings on different layers. So, and he does have a camera in After Effects, so he's moving the camera with that parallax shift, like you mentioned, while each of the drawings is changing to show that he's animating it on like 4s and 8s and stuff. It's nuts.
It's just,
you can very clearly see the entire vision early on.
Yeah. And what's it like? Because I mean, I'm sure you've both worked on the gamut. Like, you've worked on probably projects where there's very little vision. If you're lucky, you have storyboards, all the way to probably this on the other end of the spectrum. And like, I'm like, what are the positives of working in a production where there's such a tight, very clear vision from the very beginning versus maybe a little bit more loose? What would the positives be there?
I would say the positive is that working for someone who knows what they want is really refreshing. There's not a lot of figuring things out along the way, not a lot of redoing, because things change along the way. It's he knows what he's after, and as long as we can achieve that, everything's great. And he's also very good at communicating what he wants with shooting reference and getting actors and getting all of that animatic stuff very clear very early.
Is there a catch? What's the cost of that? Like, having someone who's got such a clear, powerful,
I'd say the biggest cost is just that everything has to go through him. So it's just the unfortunate slowdown where there's not enough time.
Right. Because he's a single person. Obviously, it's hard not to be a bottleneck.
He's got it all in his head. So he, all of it is up there. And so he's got to communicate that to every single department. And that's the real catch, I think. But it works out because then you get, like Remy was saying, a clear, singular vision, not something that's been done by a committee or things like that.
So how long does it take him to produce these animatics? Do you know? Like, how, like, is he like, because by the sounds of it, it's a Herculean amount of work. But I mean, do we have any idea as to how long it takes for him to kind of produce this kind of
think it was like 2 years from when we first started talking to him.
Oh wow!
It's really
wow! So he's been stewing on this for 2 years, perfecting this whole film basically in animatic form.
Yeah.
All right, so I will go to the Q&A. Let me take a look. Let's start this one. That's a funny one. Can you explain the ending? Like, maybe you both have a completely different version of the ending in your mind because it is kind of abstract in many ways. So, what's the ending in your mind, Remy?
I think the ending is whatever you want to think the ending is. But I mean, for me, I think it has to do with I think there's many things, there's many layers to it, and that's why it makes it so interesting because you can watch it multiple times and then understand a completely different way of what it means and how what's the message is. And so for me, the ending is one of them at least could be that it's about nature, and that's one that we kind of tried to pull out of Alberto, but I think it's again multiple things, but nature in the sense of there's this creature that is wild, and nature can be very dangerous and cause a lot of harm. But it's also beautiful, and then there's this human side of us who just like takes all the resources, all the gold, and all that stuff, and then at the end it ends up killing us in some way. So yeah, that's one of the possible interpretations. I feel like.
Right, Jacob. You got to do a different version.
To go in a slightly different direction than the nature thing, Alberto has always said that it's about two predators as well. I mean, on top of many other things. So to me, the ending is that she was originally the predator, and then like everything got taken from her. She was a shell of who she used to be, and in her rage and torment and I don't know the right words, but just like she's a totally broken shell of who she used to be, and in that moment she's doing everything she can to regain something, and she's just left incomplete at the end.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I thought when I saw the end, but both those make a lot of sense. I guess it's obviously metaphorical, right? Like I think that it was, like Remy said, it was built in a way that allows you to sort of project any sort of. There's so many themes that would fit so tidily into that sort of the conflict that we see kind of play out. There's something very human about it, very the sort of it's funny. I would have to reflect a little longer for me to even have a really clear idea as how I felt about it, but it just felt profound. That's for sure. How about I'll just gonna go right up the list here of questions. How much research, study, reference, armor, etc. versus animating? Like, I mean, how much work went into, I guess, the preparation of animating for this?
The research was I mean, in terms of time, it didn't take too long. I mean, I think Alberto again had a really clear vision, and that was very helpful in that way, because what he wanted is something that was true to the original, like real armors in real life, how you would find them at that time, at that specific era. So in terms of us looking for how to actually animate that armor, we had to do research in like actual museums, look at tons of videos of people wearing those armors. We had found this amazing gif of like, I think it was Jacob who brought that one up, where it was like this boot that had like this crazy flexibility to it, and that would, like, where the toes would touch like the top of the boot. So
There's all these overlapping layers of armor, and you can see that when it bends, they all like slide up onto the previous one, so that it allows for that flexibility. That sort of stuff that is integral to animation, to rigging, to modeling in a circle. They all have to coordinate together to make those things functional.
Yeah, and as you know, in the animatic, when we first saw it, there was no armor. So Alberto likes to, whenever he does his animatic, he also, I believe, films his own references for his animatic by himself. So he doesn't have an armor, so it's not there in the animatic. So this is where we look at the animatic and we see like, oh, crazy dancing, and wow, that's super cool. And then we kind of understand that, oh, it's an armor. So this brings up that this sort of quick like
Yeah.
panic. But then it's really with searching and studying the armors and how it was done and how it was moving and focusing on how they move. So it's all about slits and overlapping of metal plates. So even like for example, one of the modifications that we did is that before we had like this full plate armor that was in one piece, but in order for us to have an actual possibility to bend the spine, we needed to add a slit there. So we looked at museums again, and we looked at different armors, and some of them did have this slit in there that would allow people to actually bend forward. So this is how the whole research happened.
And as for reference, I see reference listed in that question. I'm not sure if it's about animation reference, but Alberto did get actors and dancers and choreographers, shot the entire film in reference with getting those people to act out the scenes. It wasn't shot like camera shot per camera shot. It was all on a stage with cameras just really wide where you could see the entire body of the person, whether it was going to be a close-up or not. And shot every shot with that. And so we had very detailed reference from professional actors and dancers with what he wanted to see. And so that made it very clear for us.
I assume, though, with all that work, you would still find yourself probably cheating like tremendously to make some of those shots work. I'm sure that there's like intersections and things going on that like obviously we don't see, but
I think we spent more time than we needed to looking at the intersections. It was a real challenge to make all those armor pieces that slide against each other intersect.
Yeah.
And in the end, we were worried about it for a long time. And in the end, you just look at their faces. You're watching their reactions to each other. And
and it's also a mess, right? Like that those action sequences with people just sort of jumping into the water. It's just like very quick cuts. It's like watching Saving Private Ryan. I mean, for real, like the camera is like all over the place. Like there's so much energy. You're probably able to get away with murder. So you think that might be, like you said, that might have been a time sink that you could have maybe relaxed a little bit on, all things considered. But it's hard to know, right, at the beginning, because they probably weren't working with final cameras at the beginning. So it's like, how do you know how much you're going to get away with? It's better safe than sorry, I guess.
Right. Though, I mean, we didn't really have final cameras until after animation was done. We were polishing to guesses at what the camera was going to be. So we were still doing those interpenetration fixes based on a guess of what the camera was going to be.
Right.
Yeah. So for example, of course, if it was a close up, we wouldn't care about the skirt and the legs and all that stuff. So we'd still have, based on temporary cameras that were not necessarily final, we were still able to cut some of the work depending on that. But yeah, we did have to animate mostly 360. But yeah, for the armor, as long as it wasn't something very super obvious, I think we could have gotten away with it.
Right.
But yeah.
I got a kind of a somewhat related question here from David, who's sneakily in the chat tonight, as mentioned before. It kind of goes along with the theme of the order in which you do things on a production like this, and apparently he had heard rumors. I wonder what kind of bird could have possibly came along and told him this story, that Jibaro's facial animation was done very late in the production. And I guess by very late, I guess he's sort of indicating that maybe later than even other productions. I'm sure there's a story behind this.
I would say far later than other productions. We probably can't get too much into it. But
naturally.
I would say that the both main characters were completely redesigned during the production. And so that, kind of resets modeling and it resets rigging and everything like that. And so we were able to transfer all the animation that we started on with the bodies over and then make adjustments for changes in body proportions and things like that. But for facial, we just waited because we knew it's going to redo the entire facial rig. So we can't start facial yet.
A facial rig is much more sensitive to those changes, basically. Yeah.
So that kept pushing things for a while. And I think all 15 minutes of the facial animation for all characters, including the background characters, the priests and the other knights, was done in the last 2 weeks. Production.
Wow.
And then we realized a lot of it wasn't working well enough. So then I think we added an extra 2 or 3 weeks to kind of redo Jibaro's face blend shapes and make them better. And then reanimate some scenes, some key scenes.
2 weeks. And then, too bad you didn't know you had like 4 to begin with, right? That would have been helpful because I'm sure you had to like cut corners to make 2 weeks even work.
For sure. Yes.
Oh, man.
Had we known there could have been 4 weeks, we could have
Yeah.
done those blend shape adjustments first and made
Yeah.
things work out better. But you know how things go, and you're trying to rush it, and then you realize there's a problem that you got to really readjust things.
How different were the designs? Like going back to the drawing board and redesigning the two main characters. Was it like a big
extraordinarily different? Yes.
Wow.
I don't know if we can. I don't think we should say it because I don't think Alberto wants information like that out there at the moment. We'll talk to him later, but very different.
Interesting.
Let's just say that if you look at his character designs, there's a lot of out of proportion stuff where like the jaw is to the side and one eye is much bigger, and then there's some of them are cross-eyed, and one of them has the nose like broken and to the side.
All the background lights.
All of them. They all felt almost a little bit grotesque, almost in a way, like kind of misshapen. I noticed this about his work. It sticks out. It's very, very, very clearly a direction that stands out.
Yes, exactly. So you can imagine like if changing from one design to another, how much it can impact the whole rigging and the whole animation.
Oh my God, 2 weeks. So, I totally would have just been, I just would have hid under a table, basically.
It was crazy. I think
I can imagine.
I kind of wish Chenya would be here, which was our producer at Agora. And she had the numbers of how many shots we got approved for facial in the last few weeks. And sometimes it was like, 250 shots in the last week or something. Well, it was crazy.
Because what's the runtime on that? What do you get? What's the exact length of the? Because it's around. It's more than 15, right?
So.
How many?
Just barely more than 15.
Okay, so it's around 15 minutes. Like that's not it's not like a 2-minute short. We're talking about 15 minutes. Oh, my
luckily
God.
there's only 2 characters in it for most of it.
Sure. Yeah.
But then when there's other characters, there's a lot of other characters.
Yeah.
Also, with all of those, all of the people fighting each other and spinning and dancing and jumping into the water and through the bushes and everything like that. Every single one of those people was animated independently on the origin and with reference of an actor or a gymnast or things like that. And then they're all assembled into the scene together later so that they're all throwing each other and dancing around each other and stuff.
And we had to take some shortcuts for the background characters. Because initially, the plan was to have all of them have full-on facial animations. But what we ended up doing is because there's a lot of movement, there's a lot, like you were talking earlier, there's a lot of chaos with like water splashing, people falling, horses running in the front of people, cloth everywhere, and
all the things. It has all the things. Those shots.
So the facial for the background characters, we kind of wanted to, we had to make it faster. So what we did is we did these few facial poses of like one yelling, one crunching, and some I think some other ones, but I can't remember which ones.
Like a library of facial poses, basically.
Maybe a more neutral one.
Facial animations, even there was like squeeze and there was some like jiggle to it and like compression and then open and some overshoot and stuff like that. So
and then we took those and then they were studio library animation clips, and this is where we would like stitch them together
the crap out of
to
them.
match whatever was happening in there. So that was how all the background characters were done. So
man,
we really had to cut corners.
I was going to say also an inside look at how that section is kind of built, which is different than a lot of other productions, where with a lot of productions, you would have like, okay, here's shot 27A or something. And then there's like 3 knights that run in, one jumps over the other guy, and then you animate that. But instead, because they had gymnasts with reference and we did everybody on the origin, it was like a full, he would run in, he would spin, he would jump, he would flip, and he would slam himself into the ground. And that then takes 7 shots in the final film, so it has to work from every angle because he's shooting 27A from this angle and then 28 from this angle and then 30 from this angle, all of the same animation, so that it all runs together and it's all working there. So all of those things work in 3D space so that they can all be seen from any angle.
Right. So speaking of cutting corners, I think the obvious thought for most people would probably, and I know the answer to this question, but just for the benefit of the audience in chat, mocap for background characters, for anything, was it something that you considered? Is it something you tried? Tell us about that.
We definitely tried.
Okay.
I knew Alberto from a long time ago. I know he doesn't usually like mocap for artistic reasons, because it just looks better. It's very similar, and I can see why people think that mocap would be so much faster, and you can modify mocap and everything. But if you get some amazing, basically if you don't do mocap, you get to have the animator do his artwork
Yeah.
completely from scratch, and that does like it's not something that you can necessarily point out to, but that's something you can feel. At least that's how I see it. And I think that that's pretty much how Alberto sees it as well. So that's why all of his shorts from the previous ones up to Jibaro was all keyframe animations,
Right.
for that specific reason. But for this one, again, we were very short on time, so we're like, okay, so maybe for background characters, let's have a look, let's see what we can do with it. But it would instantly stand out. So
It didn't
we
feel right.
tried.
Yeah.
It didn't feel right. We tried it, and it just didn't work. So we ended up just going back to keyframe animation.
Yeah, we should mention that it was the two of us plus Matt Jibaro was the third animation supervisor, and he has an mocap suit, and so he tried it. We were thinking we could maybe cleverly cut some corners and make things faster, but it just stood out like a sore thumb when we put it in there, and we all immediately knew that it wasn't going to work. It wasn't a right fit.
Yeah.
Interesting. So just the fact that it has to filter through a human mind, an artistic mind, even though you're using video reference to help get a basic sense of staging and timing, just that process of recreating allowed artists to get there quicker, basically, and get to the final product that was fitting right and sitting right inside of Alberto's mind. Basically, the other, it just didn't feel right otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. And also, because even if we used mocap, of course we can clean it up, we can remove things, but the work that we would have to remove and then we would have to reanimate, it ended up not saving a lot of time either.
Right.
And it ended up almost being the same amount of work of going through the reference,
right,
and just getting your mind into it and just doing it. So
what do you like? So when you're working on something like this, when you're working with video, because I mean, obviously the video reference was shot by Alberto, so he's expecting you to be using that as a reference, because he's like, I got it. This is basically the shot with maybe a bunch of notes, maybe sometimes more than others. In your mind, as you're animating these shots with this reference, like how do you approach it? Do you break down the main poses, or are you like, I'm wondering what your individual approaches are, or was there a systemic approach for animators to make everything look the same way? Like what did that look like?
I was always straight into. Sorry, Remy, go ahead.
Sorry, from now on I'll pick somebody to go, because I realize I'm not really giving anybody a particular prompt. My bad.
I tend to start straight into spline right away, working from I do the first pose to match the reference, and then from there I do the cog, just following the whole shot, straight ahead spline, to get the feeling of the reference. I know other people did slightly different things, but that was my workflow, and that's even what I do in other animated features as well. Recently, instead of pose to pose method.
Okay. And so that gave you room to embellish and to exaggerate as well, basically. Yeah. Remy, did you have a similar approach, or did it look completely different?
Yeah, no, I think it's fairly similar. I think if you wanna have all the details that you're looking for from a very realistic style, and you're following reference, personally I go straight ahead as well for these shots. And also, although obviously since it's all in 360, I would often like do this chunk and then look around and play it in different angles, making sure all the weight is at the right place, even though it doesn't follow the reference perfectly. But yeah, that would be my process. But then there was some other very creative animators who would have completely different process of animating, where one would use like this sphere. Shout out to Evan, and he would use this sphere for the COG, and then attach it to the sphere, and then that would be the isolated just the COG, just the hips to follow the reference, and then he'd do the same thing but for the leg, and then the other same thing for the other leg, and then the torso, and then the head, and then the hands. So you would end up having different keys on different
Yeah.
limbs at different times. So
Interesting.
that ended up having this very organic feel
Yeah.
to all of his animations.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's not like always perfectly timed.
Exactly.
And he
There's
follows the
offsets
reference.
built right in. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah,
I
it's
thought that
interesting.
that was very creative of
It'd
him.
be
And,
really
yeah.
it could be really interesting to do a demo at some point, get one of the two of you or maybe even both of you one day, because I think a lot of people would love to know, like, I mean, because if you could shoot some reference and you have a good process to be able to break it down, you could technically animate like that too. But at the end of the day, obviously it takes experience, but a lot of it comes down to technique as well. So I'd be kind of curious if that'd be something to follow up on one day.
That'd be cool.
Food for thought. Yeah, it would be awesome.
Sure.
Okay. There's a question here. Well, hold on. Let me hit somebody else up that hasn't had a question asked yet. This is a good one. Nice and juicy, nice and technical. There's a lot of water / blood simulations, and sometimes the two of those things mixing together, and characters interacting with it. Did you work? Did you work with this constraint? I don't know what they mean by that as a specific constraint, but I guess, like, did it have an impact on working with the animation of the characters?
A little bit, but not. It wasn't like there was a lot of back and forth with it. All the simulations were driven by animation.
Okay.
The water, the blood, the beads, everything was driven by what animation did. It came after that in the process.
Right.
Where there was a little bit of a constraint to it was that, like, when she's standing in the water or dancing in the water or anything, and she's just kind of like ankle deep, we had to do all the body animation first and then send it so they could start doing the simulations. But remember, the character changed the design. We weren't able to go through with facial and stuff, so we never finalized any of those shots. We just had to do the basic body motion, and then from that point on, we couldn't touch the feet. So even if we later decided, I wish I could polish that up or something, we couldn't really do too much because the simulation had already been run for the interaction of her ankles down with the feet and the water and everything like that, and other similar cases like that.
And then, and I think that's another thing that we could say of Alberto, is that he's very conscious of how long it takes for animation to animate these shots and animate that realistically. So he would always tend to try as much as possible to change everything around animation instead of changing the animation itself.
Right.
Especially
the animation kind of
since he's like specific about his animation direction and what he wants. So he's like, hey, guys, that rock, forget about it. Move it to the side because now the animation is here.
Right.
So yeah, you would do a lot
animation
of that.
was king, basically. It's like it was the performance, and everything could be malleable to sort of support and not get in the way of animation, basically.
Yeah.
Totally. Okay. Even the set designs were often retrofitted to fit the animation, like footsteps or which rock he climbs on. They would remodel the rock so that it fit with the placement of the hands and the feet and everything like that.
That's nice to hear. I've been a lot of productions where that's not really clearly pointed out or called out, and so, like, there's this weird struggle between multiple departments, and it's like it's hard to know where does the tie go? Does it go to, like, is it just you flipping a coin? But I guess it gave a little bit of security in your mind, knowing that, look, follow the reference, make it look good, and someone's gonna figure the rest out, basically.
Totally, which is another one of those benefits of having the one person who is designing everything and running the entire show the way he wants. So he said, animators, do what you need to do.
That's right.
And the rock will fit to what you do.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because when I watched it, I watched the kind of the teaser a long time ago, and I saw this woman kind of like running backwards and like her hands hitting the water. I'm just thinking, this is the kind of stuff that nightmares are made out of when it comes to animating, because there's just literally like everything. Like, these are scary things to typically have to deal with, like interactions. But it's awesome that that you just sort of had to not really worry about it so much. But were there struggles? There are times, like, I mean, was the references shot in water? Like, did it feel like, when people were interacting with it, that the references even showed that there was a bit of drag and friction, or did you have to add that in as animators, basically?
Excellent question. So yes, there was reference shot in a pool. Alberto shot himself underwater for all the scenes of knights that were kind of like trying to swim back up to the surface and stuff, which was awesome. And I forgot the second part of your question, but yes, it was done underwater. There were
Right.
problems with reference.
Mm.
I did a couple shots where they're like interacting and touching each other. She like moves her arm down his body, and
Yes.
there's no armor in the reference.
Of
And so
course.
like the shape of her arm or how close she is to his body
Mm.
or what the bend is like all has to be rethought because there's that
Yeah.
extra depth. There's an extra like shape that she has to move around, and
Yeah, like the contour is different. Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of changes like that have to happen.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Remy,
Interesting.
did you have anything?
No, that's pretty much it.
Oh, okay.
Were the actors wearing armor?
No.
Like were they okay? Yeah, so so pretty much all of that stuff. So that would, even going back to the earlier question about mobility, it's like that being an afterthought. Animators had to like suddenly be like, oh boy, like you said, like modifications were literally. I guess that's another example though, right? The fact that you could be like, hey, this person wouldn't even be able to move like this. Can we make a change to the actual mesh or the actual design of the armor to make it make sense? Basically, like this again,
Totally.
Animation being king, it put you in a position that you didn't have to like suddenly, do the impossible and make a character move, because that armor is always tricky, right? Because I don't know if anyone's ever really tried on a big suit of armor, but it is not what I would call a flexible experience. It's not like this, not the spandex experience that we're used to in a motion capture suit. That's for sure.
Right.
I got one here from Bane57. Hello, Bane57. Long time no see. Which one? He's got 3. Which one's more juicy? Yeah, how about this one? I like this one. All right. So from both of your perspectives, we'll start with Remy. What was the most difficult scene that you animated? And which one would be your favorite, regardless of what you worked on in the entire in the entire episode?
Okay, I think the hardest one that I got to animate was whenever she would yell. She would have all of these like crazy shakes in her hands as she was yelling. That did not read well in 3D when we were just taking the same frames as they would. So yeah, there was definitely that, and then sometimes they would shake, but with collisions with her body as she goes on her neck and everything. So that definitely took a lot of time to put that in, because we wanted to make sure that we get the same feel of it, but not necessarily copy it, because it wouldn't read well. So yeah, there was a lot of that for me.
That's
for that
deceptive too, right? Because it's really just a hell pose with noise on top of it. You'd think that would not be the most difficult thing, but it's like always the little things, right? It's always the little things.
Yeah, and it there's different types of noise sometimes, and this one had, I don't know, it was all about that feel of it making it feel right.
It turned out, I'm not just trying to butter you up, but like it turned out like whatever you ended up coming up with was awesome, because it felt so visceral. Like I could like honestly feel this sort of strain and anguish every single time that she did it. It was super like it left an impact on me. I remember thinking, I don't know what they're doing. There's some sort of black magic going on behind that whole moment. But it definitely read in the end. That's for sure. So
yeah, and it's not just in the hands too, right? Because if you shake your hands, your body ends up shaking too. And then,
absolutely.
The deeper you go into more details you go into the reference and see how it all affects the actress or the dancer, it's crazy. Everything moves.
Yeah. Well, and it felt like she was screaming with her whole body, but like it really felt like it was coming deep from within her. It didn't just feel something superficial that some actor was just trying to put on top to make it look cool. It was like, no, that was like legit. Someone was screaming for their life. Yeah, that's very, very cool. And so, okay, so what's your favorite out of the entire episode, regardless of what you worked on?
Honestly,
that's a hard one.
The ending, the last dance of Jibaro is always getting to me. I always have chills. It's always like crazy.
Right.
Even from the first time I saw the animatic, even it was like, because Alberto even does his animatics with audio and with music.
Of course he does.
So even there, you get the feeling of it and all the emotions.
Right.
So to me, it's like the whole section, this whole ending section for me.
Jacob, your turn. Hardest and what favorite?
The hardest for me personally, I don't know. I watched a lot of people do some really hard shots. My personal struggle, I think, was kind of the one that I already mentioned, where she's kind of like moving her arm across him, and it's where they're touching and interacting, and she's in his arms, and he's moving his arms all over her, and then he puts his arm around her neck and pulls her in for a kiss when they're on the waterfall. that was a really challenging thing, just because of the amount of interaction and, like I said, how much had to be adjusted from the reference. So you're kind of making some new things up because of the size of his hands or the size of the armor or the length of her arms, which is very different from when it's just him like standing there with a sword or something. It's all kind of related to itself. But when it's two separate bodies and all their arms intertwined and everything like that, it gets really challenging. My favorite one is probably the same moment. It's the end with the final dance number, but it's one of Remy's shots where she is screaming with her whole body, and it's so visceral, and I love it. It's very cool.
Yeah. I don't know. It's funny. It's like, it just something about those shots. Every single time she screams, and I love it later on. I don't want to spoil it for people, but there's a moment where her scream doesn't really work all that well. And like watching her, like, just like there's just this overwhelming discomfort with this. Like, there's something so profound about that moment where that she lost it, and then of course she ends up kind of getting it back. Well, I mean, she doesn't lose it. I want everyone to watch it. I don't want to ruin the whole story, but it's there's a moment where that doesn't go as planned, and it's I don't know. The contrast between those moments are pretty huge. Okay, I have another question,
Let's
and
do a
we're
lightning
almost.
round.
Lightning round, yeah, exactly. I'll do one here, one more from Bane, which was, how about this one? This is a pretty cool question. How about, do you think a full length film of that quality and style would be feasible? And if so, how long would it take to make in your mind?
Yeah, how long and how much
years?
Money?
Yeah,
I mean, anything's possible for sure.
Yeah.
It's a matter of time, right? Because it took a long time to do this, and it's a very passion intensive thing that you got to have that sustained for a long time in order to get that done.
Yeah. How many hours do you think it took? Animation hours, work hours, or maybe that's something you can't share.
If Shenya was here, she could tell you very precisely how many animation hours. It's like I don't know exactly. But it was the production was in animation. We were probably 6 months. Does that sound right, Remy? Something like 6 months.
If we don't count the small extension that only us had for a couple of weeks, and the pre-prod of just us figuring out some stuff at the beginning.
David said 8 months total. Although for the first month we probably weren't doing much. there was not a lot of work with the way the pipeline was set up. We didn't have a lot to do in the beginning. There was probably 7 months of real strong animation going, and we had a team of 22 people, I believe, for animation.
And all the work was done? Was there other teams involved, or was it just the Agora team that was doing it?
For animation and rigging, Agora was the only team involved.
Holy moly.
Everything else was with Pinkman.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is, that's his own production company, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
So modeling, texturing, surfacing, lighting, simulations, all of that's amazing.
His being Alberto's.
Right. Alberto, yes.
Which
Alberto's
is
production company.
Yeah, and that's his studio that he builds for every single project.
Right.
So it's never the same people. So on all the there is some people who stay kind of like me, and I sometimes hey, I know I know you.
You're like a piece of the furniture, apparently.
One of the two people that I know from these group of 20 people that worked on the previous one, But he basically like rebuilds everything from the ground up, and he has to redo the whole pipeline and how things are going to talk between departments and everything.
Right.
So yeah, it's crazy.
I'm going to end with this last question here with from David. Unless there's other questions lingering out there, now's the time to drop them. We can maybe go like 1 or 2 minutes late if you have a question that didn't get. Wow, David just dropped the big stat. 13. Come on, really? 13,000 hours. Oh, he's just doing the math, I guess. Basically, 8 months plus the team of 22.
22 people. Yeah.
Right. He's just a little sharper and faster than me, obviously. Yeah, so this we covered this a little while ago. This is this general question of the man, the legend, right? And this is a loaded question in many ways, I think. So I don't want it to turn into that. Like it could feel like a loaded question, because when you ask just point blank, what's it like to work with somebody? It's like, I mean, I think we touched on it, right? This idea of someone who's got that kind of strong vision, do you like? let me try to project a little bit. Maybe it'll kind of break the ice a little bit on this question. I would be nervous as hell working for him because obviously he is very talented. And I would just be worried that like my shots are never going to get approved. Like, is it difficult to please him? Is he a perfectionist? Like he sounds like he's a weird mix of being like this perfectionist visionary, but at the same time also respects and understands how complicated animation is. So it's like he gets it, but also at the same time he needs to push hard. Otherwise, he's not going to have this beautiful piece of work at the end that he's obviously pushing for. So mixed feeling time. Just drop it on the table. What do you think?
I love nervous? I think he's awesome. No, yeah. It's he's such an incredible creative force that is intimidating. Clearly. But he's awesome to work with, and all the things that you said are a great summation that he understands and respects all areas of the process. And he was an animator himself, so he understands the difficulties and the challenges and everything involved in it. You want to give him everything he wants so that it turns out to be the best version of his vision that you can get.
Yeah. Like it's just a lot of trust probably, right? Like I would imagine just like, look, if he says it needs to change, I don't doubt him for 1 second because I know what his films always end up looking like. So there must feel like I'm sure it's demanding, but I'm sure at the same time it could be worse, right? You could be working with a very demanding client that doesn't get it, who doesn't have a really strong vision, and you feel like a lot of those hours are just going to get poured into just right into the trash bin, basically. But when it comes to this, it's sorry, Remy, I think you were going to dump some thoughts. Oh
yeah, well, I was just going to add that it's also not hard to jump on the bandwagon, in the sense that we know that he's this amazing, and he's definitely proved himself in the past few years with all of his other projects. So everybody that were working with us on that show were thrilled to just be working on it, so it's very easy to just be like, okay, I'm going to do anything, just tell me what to do and I'm going to do it.
Totally. Just point me in a direction. I will attack. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I was going to add that go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, and there's definitely that trust that you mentioned as well.
Oh, yeah.
With Agora, because obviously we worked with him for past projects.
Well, that's it. Like there's clearly a relationship forming there. I think that he clearly, like, he wouldn't keep coming back for more Agora action if it wasn't working out. You know what I mean? Both ways. So obviously the artists that are getting a chance to work on this, they get to benefit from something amazing coming out that will live on their portfolio for a long time. I would imagine his work always seems very, timeless. You know what I mean? I don't imagine a lot of his work looking back 10 years from now going, it's so dated. I feel like it is something about it because of the abstract sort of abstract realism that he uses even in the environment where everything about this freaking film. I remember just literally just jaw gaping while looking at the because it's a friggin' forest that to add to the whole complexity, right? The level of detail that needs to be in there. Oh man. So it's you get that, right? You get that if you get a chance to work on something like this. And obviously he's getting what he wants too, because he's obviously shipping these things and it's kind of exploding on the scene when it does. Jacob, you had something you want to say, I think.
I was going to add that in terms of animation, he certainly set us up for success. That he knew exactly what he wanted. He shot all the reference. Yeah. And if we achieve what's in the reference, then it's great. And so I saw someone ask the question, was he ever unhappy with a shot?
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
Surprisingly, no. He was always super excited to see everything that we were showing him.
That's cool.
He was typing in all caps when he would type of this is fucking awesome.
That's awesome.
And it was so rewarding to get that excitement back from him. And we were also doing the same excitement to every other department along the way. It's so cool to see all this stuff. But he certainly set us up for success, that he knew what he wanted and he showed us. And so we were able to achieve that then. And the entire animation team was knocking it out of the park consistently, which was awesome.
So there wasn't that one, because every production I've been on, there's always that one shot that for whatever reason just can't get past the director, because it's just not because the animator's not doing the job, but because the shot is having a hard time working, based on just the way the camera plays out and the way that the edit works. And just for some reason, it's that one unloved friggin' stepchild shot.
Yeah, no, I don't think there was anything that was a super big problem, unless you remember anything differently, Remy. There were a couple that were we need to change a couple things now that we see it. in the
Yeah.
cut, or
Yeah.
I remember at the very beginning, the first couple of times we showed him shots, he was pointing out some stuff that we missed. And then we were like, oh my gosh, how did we not see that? And then after that, it was all good. And it was
Wow.
building that trust relationship
Right.
further again. And then he was
Right.
trusting of us very much.
Yeah, I think at some point even it was more us who were looking at the
Probably.
shots and we're not happy. We
Right.
were, you know,
We were pushing
looking,
further than he would have
Yeah,
asked,
yeah.
maybe.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
interesting. Well, that's
for a few shots. Yeah,
that's a nice feeling though, right? Like it people, we talk a lot about like crunch, and we talk a lot about like working really hard, and one thing that often comes up, and I've always said this about overtime and working hard on a production, try to ship something, is when you get caught up in that hype yourself and you feel like you are like you're almost possessed with this desire to achieve something. It feels a lot better, and it's a lot more sustainable when you put in the extra time and effort, as opposed to those productions are just poorly run. The vision is kind of boring. There's not really into it. You kind of feel like, man, this maybe this is how bankers feel, basically. Like you suddenly feel like that dream job of working as an animator is suddenly that those are the hard ones where you have to like be forced to do the overtime and work really, really hard. These kind of productions where you're just like, you're your own biggest critic because you just want it to be that much better, because you're just part of something huge, right? You know that when this thing is done, you're going to be so friggin' proud of it. So I guess that was probably pretty clear from the very beginning. I imagine, especially because his animatic was so awesome. I'm sure you took the first look at that and went, "Oh my god!" It's funny. It's funny because I mean, I guess that would probably even act as a really nice recruiting tool, probably even, right? If you were looking for animators, you just have to show them like, well, this is going to be the film. They're like, I'm going to sign up immediately. Did you have trouble finding the right kind of crew for this? Like, was it difficult finding animators, or did you were you like Noah? People were just flocking when they heard that you guys were working on another one of his masterpieces, basically.
There were a few people who were very interested to work on an Alberto short. There were a number of people that weren't really familiar with his work, but they had excellent reels, and once they saw what was going on, they were super interested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we are out of time. It is 7 minutes after the hour. I think I got through all of the questions. Pretty sure I did. If you, for some reason, did not get a question asked or answered, we are going to be having another stream Friday. We're talking about setting something up, which is going to be an official conversation with. This was sort of like a primer, which is why I was taking flack for treating it like a conversation. I get in these weird patterns. Like as soon as we go do a show, there's for me, it's like there's a warm-up period. We're just talking about stuff. And David's right. This was supposed to be 100% Q&A. But I think we got through everything, which is great. So if you are interested in hearing more, or you have some questions that didn't quite get answered, or even maybe you had a question that you just thought of between now and then show up on Friday. I believe that's when we're plotting to currently have another stream about this, but it will be an actual conversation with. I don't know exactly who's going to be showing up to that. I know that I think I don't know. I haven't looked at the guest list, but are either of you coming to that? I think you probably were.
I think we both are, and I think Matt is as well, the third.
Okay. Oh man, we're having the trifecta.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Right. Awesome. Okay, so thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time to just hang out and nerd out about obviously something that everyone's very excited by right now. That's going to be probably the talk of the town, the animation town, for probably the next several weeks.
David says it's next Friday. Next Friday.
Not this Friday. Okay, not this coming Friday. It's next Friday. Okay, good. All right, good. This is all happening like in real time today when we were deciding about trying to set some up. So that week is actually going to have 2 streams, which is pretty cool because obviously we want to fit this one in. So thank you for showing up tonight, and we'll see you again, I guess, next Friday, and we can dig a little deeper into this. Cheers, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Always. Anytime, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.
So if this conversation wasn't enough to get you excited to go and check out the short, I guess you'd call it a short film, really. I mean, they're called episodes because that's the way that they've modeled the Love, Death, and Robots seasons. They're like seasons with episodes, but the episodes are all very, very different lengths. Like there's no set framework. They really are just a series of short films they called episodes. You should definitely check it out, because and I would suggest you check out all of the stuff that he's done, because there's something about it that's hard to really fully grasp in my mind. It's just this way of, it's just like any artist that's exciting. It's like they see the world a certain way, and people just generally like the way they see the world, and the way that they communicate visually is very specific and fresh. And I've been a fan of his ever since I first saw. The first time I ever saw his work was The Witness, and I didn't know who he was. I knew that Agora had done some work on it, and I started getting kind of curious, and then I started to kind of follow the news a little bit more on what he was working on, and sort of made sure that I watched everything that he has sort of worked on ever since. So it's very cool that Agora's continued to get to work with someone like that, and even more cool that we get to then pick the people's brains that worked on it, like we did tonight. So come back for more Jibaro action and conversation next Friday. I don't even know what the date is for next Friday, but it sounds like it would be in June. Next Friday, the 3rd of June. I don't know when it is going to be on the schedule yet, but you can check socials, as it will obviously get advertised as soon as it gets set up. So that's it for me. And hopefully you all are having an amazing evening, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.